micromanagement is the biggest killer to any engagement of any team. You're basically paying somebody to do their job for them, micromanaging. I think you should set out your terms, you should set out what needs to get done, and if it's not done within that time, you review it. At the height of my career, I was employing 40 people or thereabouts. It was me and another business partner, and we worked really hard to make sure that we were engaging with that team. The biggest thing that you can do is to find out what motivates your team and empower them with just the knowledge and know-how and the structure for them to grow organically. You have to find what motivates them, and you have to, one, give them the structure to do it, and then share your vision and what your goal is as well. I think that's the key thing, is for you to have a vision and for you to share that vision with your team so that they can be an extension of you and who you are.
Welcome to another episode of Driving Productivity with Harjit Chana. I'm really pleased to be bringing you Jag Singh Kainth today. Jag's a brilliant optician. We're going to talk about three really important things: engagement, planning and communication. We're out on a sunny Sunday morning.
Absolutely.
Jag, before we dive into that, credentials.
I'm an optometrist that's qualified back in 2006. I cut my teeth initially with Specsavers and started off as an optical assistant back in 2002. Worked my way through the ranks and became an optometrist going through university since 2006 to sort of early 2022 to 2023. I was working as an optometrist pretty much in the retail sector for most of that time, and I was a director of 3 Specsavers practices, 2 optical, 1 hair care, through a 6-year period, and really learned quite a lot in that entire journey. At the height of what I was doing in that, we employed 40 people, and it's been a really steep learning curve in business especially, and now I've taken on a small independent practice and kind of moved away from the fold and trying to create a whole new path with Oracle Opticians in Shipley.
Brilliant. And those 3, did any of those, did you start from scratch with any of those? Or?
No, it wasn't. I took over, I'd taken over an existing practice. Well, I had a small percentage of an existing practice with another partner that I was there for a good 5 years. I was there 9 years in total, but 5 years as a partner. And alongside that, I'd taken on the hair care business. So there was the optical business and the hair care business. So they were the 2 practices that I had from 2014 to 2019. And then a few years later, I had the opportunity to open another practice in Clitheroe with someone else. And was there for about 7 months or thereabouts, or nearly a year. But due to logistical issues and whatnot, decided to sort of step away from that one.
Brilliant. So, but you've got that sort of real hands-on experience, lived experience, managing people, increasing sales, the usual hits.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then you transferred that into your current practice. But before we dive in depth, what do you do outside of work?
At the moment, I don't have much time to do much outside of work because I'm flat out with work, and any time I do have, I spend with my family where I can. But if I get time, I love music, so I do try and play guitar where I can. I've not played for some time, but I play Spanish guitar, and I love playing Spanish guitar.
Brilliant.
I also I go karate with my little boy, and I've only just got into that, to be honest. And I think I needed a bit of exercise because I don't do much when I'm working, so I've got to start and get back into it. And it's just something I can do with my little boy, so it kind of builds that connection.
That's brilliant.
Ironically enough, you wouldn't think it's something I would think is somewhere to relax with. But I love cleaning my car. I do.
Very therapeutic car.
It's really good. I do. When I get a chance to do it, I love cleaning my car.
Yeah, I used to, for me, it's really therapeutic. It helps me just sort of switch off.
Yeah.
And you get on with the task in hand. And music, I'm with you on that. It's, it feeds the soul, does music.
Yeah, it
certainly
does.
for me.
And there's an element of instant gratification with some of these things. You get a result relatively quickly if you're doing it. And I think that's what helps, especially when you're in a business or when you're working towards something and changes take time. And you can't see those instant results. You have to work towards them. So something that just gives you that instant gratification, I think that's what
Brilliant.
puts it in there.
Love it. Okay, so we're going to talk about three things. We're going to start with engagement,
Yes.
Jag. So talk to me about engagement, why you feel it's important. And this podcast's all about productivity. So it's helping small businesses or large businesses to dial up that productivity. And in the UK, we still struggle with productivity. It seems to be a bit of a puzzle at the moment, has been for some time. So anything we can do and share with businesses to help them dial up productivity a little bit will be really welcome.
From a productivity point of view and an engagement point of view, especially engagement, I think the biggest thing you can do is engage with your team. At the height of my career, I was employing 40 people or thereabouts.
Yeah.
It was me and another business partner, and we worked really hard to make sure that we were engaging with that team.
Yeah.
It's funny because the biggest thing that you can do is to find out what motivates your team.
Yeah.
And empower them with just the knowledge and know-how and the structure for them to grow organically.
Yeah.
I think
that's brilliant.
The hardest thing when it comes to anyone, especially with people, it's human beings are human beings at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think there's this mindset where you think, well, that's the job and if you get it done. But what it doesn't do is that if you think that a linear line from point A to point B is a very difficult it's a difficult thing to do. To engage somebody to kind of follow that path and stay engaged on that path.
Yeah.
You have to find what motivates them, and you have to give them the structure to do it, and then share your vision and what your goal is as well. I think that's the key thing. Is for you to have a vision and for you to share that vision with your team so that they can be an extension of you and who you are.
Absolutely. Well, we often talk about purpose.
Yeah.
That having purpose in your organisation and ensuring that your people understand your purpose is really important.
Yeah.
It's interesting because Gallup, the survey company, there's a survey, and in that survey they suggested that highly engaged teams show 21% uplift in productivity.
Absolutely.
And in profitability. And in sales, so higher sales as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really important starting point, isn't it?
Absolutely. And there's the if you are clear with your team, I think when I was coming into this business and this particular business that I went into, which was Specsavers, it was difficult because when you have everybody on a slightly different page, everybody's doing something slightly different. It compounds. The impact compounds because when point A is speaking to point B and point C is not speaking to point D, and it can all kind of dismantle very quickly. And to be honest, it's very, it drains you if you can't, align those visions correctly and do it in a timely manner because, especially in retail's a really tough gig because you only have a set period of time to make your money really.
Yeah.
You're opening at 9 o'clock, you're closing at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And if you've not made your money in that time, that's it. I mean, we live in a different world now where the online space, if anyone's opening any business today, if you've not got an online space or got a plan to make an online space, it's going to be very detrimental to you in the next 5 or 10 years.
Yes.
And I can honestly, genuinely see that happening.
That's a really good point.
But in retail, especially with the sort of work we do, which is mainly healthcare and spectacles, it's difficult because you only have a set period of time in the week.
Yes.
And you have to make your money in that time. If you haven't got appointments booked or you've got no one in there or your teams are not engaging with the people as an extension of your vision, then you will lose the opportunity. And your bills don't stop coming out. You still got to pay those bills.
Yeah.
Your wage bill still comes up at the end of the month. Your gas and electric bill still comes up. Your rent comes up at the end of the month. So if you're not making that money in that time, it's a really hard gig. And and that's why a lot of, especially retail businesses, will fail in those first few years in that infancy, because if that engagement isn't there with the team, and then, because you can pay as much money as you need to pay to get people through the door, but if you've not given the right message to the team to reflect what you're trying to tell them, they can't relay that to the person in front of them.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I guess the thing is, Jag, with your previous experience, you're responsible for 40 people. That could be 40 families, potentially.
Yes, absolutely.
And so you've got to keep that sort of, that door turning in terms of customer.
100%.
And you're responsible for the inflow of revenue on that basis. The more you can engage your people on that, the better. I guess the other side of it is retaining good staff as well.
That's it.
Yeah, so when they're really engaged, surveys suggest that they're over 80% less likely to leave. Can you imagine that?
Well, I've seen it firsthand where, just engaging with the team and giving them purpose is the purpose of what they're doing, and especially with practitioners. I'm an optometrist myself.
Yeah.
And I know how disengaging it can be is if your only role in that whole thing is just go to work, do your tests, go home.
Yeah.
It's very, in the first 2 years or 6 months to a year, or even in those initial kind of periods where you qualified, you were learning, so you're absorbing more and more information.
Yeah.
But there is a point where, if all you're seen to do is to maybe test eyes and see a patient after patient after patient, the disengagement becomes rife.
Yeah.
And you just go, well, I can't do this for the rest of my life. It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
So it's so important to kind of find what allows someone to grow organically, really.
Yeah.
Internally. You've got to kind of find an engagement as to what motivates them. And it could be something as simple as, I just want to pay the bills for my family and be a good mom or a good dad. I want to have time off on the weekends. I want to be able to develop myself in a certain field.
Yeah.
And I do have this idea and a theory that, if you have somebody, you should really be counting your lucky stars if you've got them for 6 years.
Yeah.
I think everyone goes through maybe a 5 or 6 year cycle when it comes to that position that they're in. And after 5 or 6 years, it's hard for them to move anywhere within an organization that has kind of like a top level.
Yeah.
Because you can't push them beyond that level. You hit a level and there's not much more they can do.
Yeah.
So the only thing they can do is either spread laterally, or take a risk to do something else, or move a position which might pay them more money, but doesn't particularly give them engagement. So it's about finding that real internal level, what will allow them to kind of figure out, look, I want to pursue something a little bit more than me that will give me an opportunity somewhere else. And don't be afraid to lose them after that period of time. You have to cycle people through in a very organic way that allows for growth for your business and for the person that you're taking on.
Brilliant. That's really sort of courageous for you as well, is sort of helping people move on.
Yeah, and I just think, just on that, if you hold on to people for too long, it can actually be quite damaging to the business.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong. If someone's engaged and they're there and they love their position and they love what they do, that's different.
Yeah.
But if someone has this idea for growth, that they want to be something beyond that you can't offer them at a certain level, don't hold on to them.
Yeah.
And don't fear that they're going to exceed what your level might be, because I think everyone has their own journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So just flipping that on its head then, what about the starting point? When you're recruiting somebody, what are the key factors you look for? Because, I guess getting the right people is the starting point of that engagement journey, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think different sectors will have different things that will engage the person that you're taking on. In retail specifically, you have to be someone that is kind of more people orientated, happy to kind of take and come out of the comfort zone. Yeah. And wanting to learn and grow. So there's this idea that obviously there's a lot of information out there now that, Gen Z, millennials, kids that are coming through are not maybe as engaged in terms of, human interaction and that engagement as maybe the previous generation. Now, you can't, if you work in the industries that we work in, you can't rely on that. You can't say, oh, well, someone's coming in and they're not going to do it because the stats tell me that. You can't have a crystal ball about every human being that walks through your door. You're going to have to take a chance somewhere down the line. And some of those mistakes will happen, and, you know, we all make mistakes, we're human beings. But if you're not clear to the person in front of you what you expect of them before they walk in the door, then that's your failing. It's
a really good point. I think you know, matching values.
Absolutely.
You know, if they have the same values as you, then, you know, it's a good starting point as well.
I agree. And if they can see your vision, feel that they understand what the purpose is for the role that they're coming into, they're coming in with open eyes. And if they don't engage with that role, well, then you have to make the steps to then say, look, this isn't working out. Just have the confidence to say, look, we have to move on. And you find someone else. Eventually you'll find a team. And the thing with teams is it takes time. And the key thing in this is that you have to try and make sure that you set an equal playing field for everybody. So that if someone does come in and you've sold them on a vision, but now you're treating them differently to other team members, they'll pick that up really quickly. And if they pick that up quick enough, they will absolutely disengage in the role that they're coming in on.
Well, one of the biggest factors, a top driver of engagement is fair and inclusive leadership. So I guess that's what you're saying there, isn't it?
Well, and the thing is, if you don't set, and that's the hardest bit when you're actually building that kind of business, or any kind of business that you're building, is it's the hardest thing you can do is building the systems. I read this really good book. It's called The E-Myth. It's a fantastic book, and it really homes in on really building systems and working on a system that works for your team and for your customer base. You know, and I'm really close with someone that has coached me through a lot of, you know, business workings, and he's been close to me for quite a number of years, and he's really kind of intrinsically put that into me as well, and says, look, you know, you have to make sure that you're looking at dotting all the T's, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, just so that you can measure what you're doing. If you can't do that, it's really, really difficult to pursue that forward.
So part of sort of the engagement thing is sort of, you know, being clear on what you're measuring, sharing that with your staff as well, so they have a clear picture of the business. I think that's really important as well.
Absolutely.
And shared values.
And you know, and making sure everyone's singing off the same hymn sheet, you know, and those systems are in place.
And then you talked about sort of investing in people, helping them grow, you know, empowering them to make decisions. All of that sort of, you know, leads towards that sort of level of engagement, particularly in retail, you know, particularly when you're on the high street.
And I think a really important thing to take on is micromanagement is the biggest killer to any engagement of any team. And, you know, I'm not a micromanager. I find it very exhausting to try and manage and micromanage. You're basically paying somebody to do their job for them, micromanaging. You know, I think you should set out your terms, you should set out what needs to get done, and if it's not done within that time, you review it.
So the last interview we did was with a lovely guy called Stuart Bromley, and he used a phrase which I think is incredible, which is hire talent and set it free. You know, and that, you know, that's the way to do it, isn't it? If you want engaged staff and higher productivity, and them to really, you know, be completely bought into your business.
100%, absolutely.
Okay, so let's move on then to planning. And I know that you were busily sort of sorting stuff out in your shop the other day. Talk to me about planning and why you think that's really important.
So if you're walking into any kind of business that has kind of a backup support network, you've got a bit of a safety net. So you have some of that planning done for you. And you can walk in and you can kind of roll into a kind of, right, so I have to just follow this process and I have to do that. Now, even with that kind of backup, you need to be really super organized. And taking on a business that was, you know, already existing but had baggage with it, things that came with it, you have to learn to clear stuff out and clear it out quick.
Okay, so when you say clear stuff out, you mean old stock? You mean poor processes, outstanding complaints? Well, what are the
a little
examples?
a little bit of everything. One,
Right.
I think it's good to kind of make a plan and have an understanding of where everything sits and what you've got, and take stock of what you do have, and then very quickly clear your space to make sure you've got a free rein to think.
Yeah.
Keeping it lean and clean is what they say in the exercise world
Yeah.
and the muscle industry, but.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's the same in business. You have to have a really lean and clean operation. That means that you've got no clutter, nothing extra that you don't need, because I really believe this. People love to hide in chaos. You know, and that's not just employees and people that you work with, it's yourself.
Yeah.
If you've got stuff that's lying around and you've got things that need to be dealt with, it's basic brain space that your brain subconsciously interacts with.
Yeah.
And stops you progressing.
Okay.
So if you can start clearing out stuff that you don't need, and I think a good rule of thumb that I've talked to you about on this is the 3 month sort of rule. I use 6 months.
Yeah.
If I've not used it in 6 months, throw it in the bin, or get rid of it, or give it to somebody that might find it useful. Because, you know, I think it's, especially if, you know, I'm from an Indian heritage, Sikh heritage background, you know, and family, you know, from us, we hoard things, we keep things, we want to keep holding things because somewhere down the line it might make, you know, some use. And culturally, that's what a lot of us have been brought up with. And to be honest, it's the one thing that will hold you back more than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And in lean, I know you use the term lean, but you're not trained in lean, which is really interesting.
No.
In lean, we use an expression called 5S, and that's all about sort of sorting out stuff. So sort it out, set it in place, you know, shine it, you know, have a standard. So there's a place for everything, and everything has a place.
Absolutely.
In industry or in manufacturing, they use shadow boards and things, and sustain. Now, I'm going to share a story with you. I was working overseas for a company, and we started this, and they were very reluctant to do this sort of stuff. Anyway, I found out, looking through their accounts and stuff, they were making payments for 3 storage areas. One of them cost $250,000 a year. So we went for a little wander, and we had a look at what they had in there. They had stuff that was 30 years old.
Wow.
Just in case. I mean, he hadn't used it for 30 years. Anyway, we realised that they were just hoarding absolute garbage. And that, you know, they didn't need that storage space. So,
well, it takes time to maintain it as well. I mean, look, think about all the money that they would have spent just for people to go and have a look and see what it is.
Yeah.
So is it
go have a look, see if we've got a 30-year-old item.
Yeah.
So yeah, really solid advice that particularly for small businesses, is having that order. And it's not just physical things, is it?
No.
It's technology. So, you know, your filing system on your computer systems, you know, having 1 or 2 Excels, not 500, you know, that
that's
kind
right,
of stuff.
100%. And, you know, and it is important that, because quite easily, especially in the world we live in, I mean, photographs is a classic example of that.
Sure, yeah.
You'll take 1,000 photographs on your phone and you won't get rid of them. They'll just sit there and they'll just hoard up space.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that is like a times 10 model of what you can do in a business where you've just got document after document and this and this, and one person's finding one document somewhere else and one person's finding it somewhere else. And if that isn't brought to kind of central source, and you know, rotas are actually a big one on that, you know, especially in retail, you know, we were managing, there was one point I was managing the rotas for 40 people and it was a nightmare. Anyone that does rotas in retail, any retail, whether you're in a supermarket, an optometry practice, and a pharmacy, something that has public facing usage, rotas are the biggest and hardest nightmare anyone could do. It's all about being organized. It's all about having a plan and a system. And if one person does one thing on how to manage rotas and someone does something else, it's a very, very hard, difficult task.
You know, rotas can cause a lot of stress for the employees.
Yeah, it can.
You know, a lot of disengagement. We just talked about engagement. Well, last minute changes can be very, very damaging. Interestingly, Jag, one of our first conversations, knowing that you're not a capacity planner.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Bradford Factor.
Yeah, I did.
The only optician I've ever spoken to that knows about the Bradford Factor. And if you don't know about the Bradford Factor, look it up. It's used for capacity planning. And it's a very useful tool.
It really, when I did, there was an issue when you are managing people, is that if you treat people differently, they will quite easily pick it up and disengage.
Yeah.
And sickness planning and absence management planning and holiday planning is a big part of that.
Yeah.
So if someone is calling in sick all the time, or you're having issues with absence management, you know, it's very difficult to do that. And going back to kind of that whole idea of keeping lean and clean, if your paperwork for one person is in one place and for someone else it's somewhere else, or they're not aligned and they're not the same,
Yeah.
and you're not treating them the same,
Yeah.
you will not get the same level of engagement.
Yeah.
And it all comes back down to that planning factor. So when we tried to use and plan for people and build a system that could, you know, plan for everyone's rotas and give them time, and
Yeah.
we used to plan the rotas 2 months ahead so everybody knew where they were. The Bradford factor became really useful because what it does is it gives a score based on absence, but gives the accountability back to the person.
Yeah.
So rather than you being the person that manages them, they get to manage themselves.
Brilliant.
And
Brilliant.
that's what you want, you know, and all you're doing then is caretaking that.
But it also demonstrates the fact that you really do get into understanding the job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
You know,
So you're not just sort of doing it at a high level, you're actually understanding how it works. So that, you know, that in itself is a lesson, is learn about
Yeah.
the things that you're responsible for.
absolutely. And I think it's quite easy to take on a managerial position and say, oh, well, that person's... I don't think you need to know everything that goes on in every nook and cranny, because everyone will take responsibility for the roles, but you need to know how the pieces fit together.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think it's really important that you have because I think one of the key things that I was taught really young that didn't make sense to me was, oh, you're meant to, as a manager, you delegate.
Yeah.
Right. And it's really important about delegation, because I think the idea of delegation is really, really, you know, seductive, but the practice of delegation is completely different.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a fine line between delegation and abdication.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly it. So delegation, you have to understand that role, understand what it means, hand it to somebody and make them accountable, responsible for it. You'll be
Yeah.
accountable for
Yeah.
it, but they're responsible for it. And that accountability, responsibility role is where it gets confused, because if to think that someone has delegated a job and then they're going to have to take the knife for it if something goes wrong,
Yeah.
I think is a big misunderstanding when it comes to delegation.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you're a manager or any kind of top level, you're accountable, full
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
And you are giving responsibility to somebody to make sure that they do the job in the way you've set it out. And
Exactly.
that takes time.
So true leaders empower their teams, but protect them as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Take the fall if they need to take the fall.
Human beings are human beings, Harjit. They will make mistakes. And I think this is half the battle when it comes to people wanting to employ people. I've spoken to people that have small businesses, mainly like things like coffee shops, those sort of things. And I say to them, I say, look, do you ever empower your teams, or do you ever... But because they see it as a service role, you'll never retain them and you'll never allow them to grow. And then you will never grow. You'll always be... You'll be chained by the business and bound by the business.
Brilliant. So tell me about do you have a daily planning routine, or...
Yeah, we do. We have a beginning of day list and an end of day list.
Okay.
You know, so we do come in and we follow that list. And we have to try and make sure that because you'll have people coming in on different days.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be responsible for certain days. I've got my manager that's responsible for other days.
Yeah.
You know, we all have to sing off the same hymn sheet, and it's just about being consistent. Being at the start of any business, financially, it's quite a big burden.
Yeah.
You know, responsibly, it's quite a big burden. And I have to, on top of having my hat on for the clinical side of things, I've got my hat on for the retail side of things, I've got my hat on for the engagement side of things, the employee side of things,
Yeah.
the operational side of things. It's a lot to take on. So
Yeah.
if the managers have their job to do, someone else has to do that job when they're not there, and that
Yes.
falls back on me. So
Yes.
consistency is key in it. And, you know, for all the goodwill in the world, it's hard when you've got a lot on to do that. But the idea is to make sure that consistency and repetition and doing it in a structured way will mean that it culturally beds into the business.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and that's important. So having our planning routines for starting the day, we have a checklist that we follow through on. We have a checklist at the end of the day. Cash handling is an important one because you need to be accounting for, because again, you're not just dealing with online transactions. You're not dealing with just
Yes.
card transactions. You'll be dealing with cash transactions. And my manager was really hot on this, actually. She was really good in saying, look, you know, we need a cash handling policy and it needs to be ASAP because you might not be in and I don't want to be responsible for money going missing.
Yeah.
And it's so important that you have cash handling policies. So we do cash handling every day now. You know, we take the money out, we put it in a safe. It's counted in the morning. It's done ideally with 2 people.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
procedures and that process.
So having that structure of procedures, policies.
Absolutely.
Even a small business needs that, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, I think if you've not got those structures in place, it's you either are set free by your business or you're bound by it.
Yes.
And if those policies and structures are not set in place, you will be bound by your business because you will not have the freedom to grow it and you will not have the freedom to trust people to run it.
Yeah.
And that's my view.
Just talk to me about your start of day and end of day list. Is that on Excel or is that handwritten?
It's on both, actually.
Right.
So we have an Excel spreadsheet that we print out.
Yeah.
And the reason it's printed out is because when the manager comes in to see it on a spreadsheet, if you can't see it, it's what gets seen gets done, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I'm trying to get at. You know, if you've got it on a computer, for all the goodwill in the world, in a retail setting when you're seeing people and you're busy, if it's not in front of your face, you won't do it.
Exactly.
And that's what's important in this, is that you've got something that's in your face that says tick box, tick box, tick box, tick box. I've signed this. I've physically written my name next to it.
Yeah.
Anybody can type something in. Anyone can sign it off on a spreadsheet.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's easy to press the button and say I've done it because you're ticking a box. Whereas if you're intrinsically signing something off, it literally ticks it in your brain that you actually will physically do it as well.
Do you know, and it's interesting because HBR, Harvard Business Review, did a study, and they found, this is in 2023, that those who adopt daily planning routines or do experience between 20 and 25% greater potential of delivering on their tasks.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a big uplift, isn't it?
Look, honestly, I think I'm quite digital with stuff.
Yeah.
And I can learn a digital platform relatively quickly.
Yeah.
You know, for what it is. And I've tried countless times, Harjit, to put things on my to-do list on my phone. I bought iPads and pens and, you know, everything to make it so that I don't have any extra paper.
Yeah.
And you know, I was telling you about, you know, I have a lot of people that I speak to, but there's one person in particular who says, just get a notebook and keep it. And trust me, every successful person that I've met has a notebook and writes in it every single day.
Yeah.
And I started doing it. It was more recent than anything else, and it hits home, and it's absolutely right. It is the one thing that I think, if you can write something down, physically see it, the dopamine hit you get just by crossing it out is incredible.
There was a study by the University of Tokyo in 2021.
Yeah.
And they found in their study that handwritten notes and handwritten planning is retained 40% higher through handwritten notes than digital notes. So yeah, I think there's still, and for me, I handwrite.
Yeah.
You know, I do feel different when I make notes on paper, and you know, that's just my world. But
I think it's important to understand that if you do have I think it's important to have a digital list to kind of let loose on everything out, so that you can organize it and see it. But when it comes to picking specific tasks to do for the day you're planning for, you can take it from that list, but make sure it's in front of you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to the final bit, communication.
Of course. I think communication, it's really funny because, you know, I'm the biggest person to say, oh, listen, communication is great, but sometimes I'm the worst person for it because why can't people just read my mind and figure out what I'm thinking and just know? But, you know, whatever that communication line is, I think it's important to, especially with your teams. I mean, again, having a central digital platform where you can put things on is great, and having everyone having access. But just again, it comes back down to even writing stuff down. Intrinsically, we're human beings. We all need to talk. We all need to have communication, and we all need to be speaking to each other on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something before that is quite prominent in our world, especially in sort of retail optics, is a morning huddle.
Yeah.
And a morning meeting. And, I've tried to implement that in my business as well. And it's difficult because to get all the team together to do that regularly is a really difficult job. But it's a really important thing to do when communicating. I mean, sometimes it's hard enough for me to tell my wife I'm going out with my friends, so to say. So those are very,
there's was it McKinsey did a study that suggested that communication, we all know, is really important.
Absolutely.
But it can have a 20% uplift on productivity. Just having clear, concise, and transparent communication.
Yeah.
Whoa! Nearly knocked somebody over there.
Yeah.
It's a farmer running out of a field.
But
That might be a car boot sale. Anyway, we didn't get him.
Yeah. He got saved. He just got saved.
Yeah. Very good. His eyes communicated something.
Yeah.
Okay, so brilliant discussion, Jag. Really enjoying it. What are the 2 or 3 things that somebody can do tomorrow? If they listen to this podcast, they go, like what Jag's saying, what are the 2 or 3 things that they can start with tomorrow? Just to turn the dial.
First thing I'd say is clear out your clutter.
Yeah.
And try and, clear your space. It's a really easy thing to say.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think just from my personal experience, there's a certain level of pain getting rid of things.
Yeah.
And I don't say that physical pain. I mean that the emotional attachment you put onto things and go, if I get rid of this, I might have to spend again to buy it again or do something. Just in case. And I call it, to be Zen at that level, really. You've got to have that environment that gives you the clear capacity to do the work you set out to do.
Yeah.
And that's not just true of your business. It's true of your home. It's true of your surrounding space. It has an impact on your family as well if they're constantly in the middle of chaos.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
Everybody loves to hide in the chaos.
Yeah.
Because they have to, when you clear stuff out, it's like looking in a mirror. It kind of clears what is actually hiding underneath.
Yeah.
Emotionally.
I love that.
Honestly.
I love that. Yeah,
so
it's brilliant.
That's a really key thing. Start clearing out stuff. And going back to what you're saying, just a place for everything and everything in its place.
Yeah.
That's one key thing I'd say to people to take away.
Don't come into my garage then.
Yeah, don't come into mine either. Yeah, well, we have that in common then because it's piled and stuck to the brim at the moment. But
okay. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
Clear out the clutter. Next one.
Sharpen your skill set. I have come into optometry for about nearly 20 years now.
Yep.
And, when I first became qualified, I really dead engaged. I was really learning. I was soaking up so much information. I was really applying that knowledge. And, and you've got to not just continue to sharpen your skill set in the profession, but you've got to surround yourself with people that will encourage you to do it.
Yeah.
So a key takeaway for me would be, look, continue to keep learning and getting better at the job that you're doing.
Yes.
I think everybody, when they sort of get to a certain level, especially when it comes to sort of the healthcare professions, is they kind of feel like they hit a ceiling with certain things.
Yeah.
Certain practices, and go, well, there's no point me learning anymore because the potential for me to earn anymore diminishes with it.
Well, yeah, I think stagnation comes with the desire of not wanting to learn anymore.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
It does. And I think, especially since I've taken, I've opened independent practice because, I kind of hit a ceiling on what I wanted to do in the roles that I were in. And to be honest, I wanted to do something different. And, there's no bigger risk that you can take to start learning something new. Yeah. Because you don't know whether you're going to get a reward or a return for it. No one sits there to start learning the guitar to think they're going to be, a world famous rock star. They don't do that. You do it because, it will build something extra in you. It's another string to your bow, and it actually allows you to continue, because that will lead to something else that you'll learn, to lead to something else that you'll learn, to eventually lead to something that you'll be passionate about doing.
Okay.
You know, I'm passionate about doing, I've learned a lot in the time and the career I've had, but my application now and my continued learning comes from me taking a risk in the business that I'm in now.
Brilliant. Okay.
And I think it's really important to start making small steps of learning something new, even if it's a course, whatever you're doing, just start continuing to learn.
Yeah, do something every day towards it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and the last one?
Learn to become more disciplined. Something that I'm working extremely hard on to try and do.
Yeah.
Again, I think having any kind of life without discipline will ultimately mean that you will stagnate, essentially.
Yeah.
And I've learned that harder and harder it's got in, especially the world we live in today, if you don't have those fine-tuned disciplines, like just simple things, you know, doing end-of-day lists and not going, oh, we'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Is to find the strength in you to do the job.
Yeah.
To get it done and not really have an excuse to be, you know, accountable for when you don't do it. Not hard on yourself, but say, I didn't do it, but I'll push through and make sure I do it. So
exactly.
Discipline discipline will separate. I said this to you actually. I actually like this sentence. It separates the kings from the princes.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
Princes are entitled and kings are made.
Discipline is the cornerstone of success, isn't it?
It really is. And I think I'm still working on that journey. It's really easy to someone sit in front of a camera and give advice about, oh, you should do this, or you should do that. This is what you should do. But my biggest pet peeve is hypocrisy. I can't say to somebody, do something, and I can't do it myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Or be working on doing it myself.
So, Jag, just at a stop, cup of tea and a nice sandwich.
Yep.
We were talking about clearing out the clutter, sharpening your skill set, and then what was the third thing you wanted to talk about?
So the third thing that I think will really make a difference in terms of having an instant change is just making those small steps towards becoming more disciplined. Have the focus and the mindset to get through a situation will build your resilience, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's really important to mention that, because resilience is an important tool that you need to get through any situation with any business, good and bad. You know, I think it's easy to roll with the good times. It's when times get hard, when times get hard, that's where your disciplines and your resilience will come through. And I think that's a really important thing to work on. So a key thing, and please, I don't want to sort of come across as if I'm like perfect. I'm not. I'm certainly not. I'm in a learning journey in all of this. You know, I've set up a new practice. It's a really difficult thing to do. There are a lot of sleepless nights. There are a lot of worrying about how point A gets to point B and how we work through that. So to say that I've opened a practice and I'm doing all of these things would be a really misleading thing to say to any of the viewers that are watching this, and to say, do this and do this and do this and you'll be fine. We're human beings at the end of the day.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. We have to work towards a set status, but not be hard on ourselves to say, oh, why am I not there yet? If you're working towards it, you will get there. And to be honest, there's no destination in this. I think that's what you don't want to sort of work out. There's not a destination. There's just the journey. You've got to take steps to get more discipline, to work towards yourself and work on yourself. And ultimately, we'll see that compounding impact between point A and point B.
Yeah, that level of discipline, does yield results, doesn't it?
It does. And I think we're in a society now, especially now, where we're looking for instant gratification.
Yeah.
We're looking for the instant result, the instant hit. And when it comes to a project or something that you're passionate about or something you're working toward, whether it's a musical instrument, whether it's, something you're learning, whether it's getting better, or whether it's becoming a qualified practitioner in any form, there's no instant gratification. It will take time. It will all take time.
Yeah.
It's how you deal with that time and how you walk that path will determine how you evolve in that journey.
And that resilience piece is really important, Jag.
Absolutely.
For small businesses, for people going up the corporate ladder as sort of new leaders, resilience is key, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, 4 really good tips there, actually. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure talking to you,
You too,
Jag.
bro.
I think you've got a lot to offer. I love the fact that you're constantly improving your own skills and looking into things that perhaps, support what you do as opposed to directly influence what you do. And I think that's a great mindset. So where can people find you?
So I have now opened a 100% independent practice in Shipley in West Yorkshire called Oracle Opticians. We are specializing in pretty much all eye health scenarios. We provide some of the leading products in the marketplace from Nikon, Hoya, SLR, Zeiss. We have some of the most latest brands in terms of spectacle wear. See you wearing your Dita Max 6s right now.
Thank you.
Which are incredible. So I'm one of only 2 suppliers in the whole of West Yorkshire for a brand called Dita, which is one of the best frame suppliers in the world. We have amazing frame designers such as Arlen, Tom Ford. So again, and our key thing is so the ethos of the business that I've set out, is about prevention before cure, especially when it comes to eye health.
Yeah.
We're all about preventive measures for maintaining healthy sight. And we specialize in macular degeneration, myopia management, and general overall eye health and healthcare. We're really focused on providing a service and time, because that's the one thing you'll find a lot less of nowadays in most services, is that there's no time and there's no consistency with service across a lot of these things. So I decided to go out of the fold and venture into my own thing, and put everything on the line. And I'm not there yet. We've still got a long journey ahead of us, but we'll get there.
I think what I've experienced with you, and full disclosure, is you've provided these spectacles. I have paid for them, but you discounted them.
Yes.
But what I found with Oracle is that you've got that old school family thing going. You really are very, very caring of customers. They're not a number. You wrap your arms around them and you do your best to support them. And if you're looking for that kind of experience, along with some fancy spectacles, look up Jag.
We're trying to build a hub for kind of providing genuine, down-to-earth, real-life eye health advice. And I think when it comes to eye health, most people think there's a one-shot bullet to get things done. Everything is linked to your main health. Keeping your body healthy, keeping yourself fit, eating the right things, taking the vitamins. Although, even as a practitioner telling you this, I'm probably not the best example sometimes. I'll have a bacon sandwich when I want one. I'll want to go out with my friends and have a nice time when I want to. But again, it's about being sensible about yourself, your body, and doing the right things. Again, it's all about that compounding impact.
Yeah.
Little steps now make a better long-term result for overall eye health and just your body health as well.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Jag.
Thank you.
And please like, share and subscribe, and enjoy the podcast.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.